We have to really make sure that for us to utilize data more effectively, properly, the all aspects of data will have to be ensured that they are accurate and correct, right?
If you look at today, data quality is principally or foundationally important to the success of any AI and analytics project.
We have to really identify what is the authoritative data source for that data element, and then measure the quality of data in those authoritative data source.
So is there an audit process that needs to be done before, or is there a consultation or consulting engagement that is required typically? How does it really work? Hey everyone, welcome to Prescience AI Connect, the podcast where we discuss everything related to enterprise AI, data, and analytics. Today, we are going to touch upon an important aspect of that continuum, data, AI, and analytics. Today, we are going to talk about data quality. And we are doing a three-part series on data quality, where the first part, we are focusing on the foundation and the business impact. The second part, where we're going to focus on strategy, that is data quality strategy and implementation. And on the third part, we are going to talk about tooling. Data quality also has a lot of dependency and directly related to tooling. So we are going to focus on that. To begin with, why data quality? If you look at today, data quality is principally or foundationally important to the success of any AI and analytics project, which is why data quality is increasingly becoming critical. To talk about that and more, I'm going to invite Shiva to our podcast today. So Shiva, let's get started with that.
Sure. So there are various dimensions to data, and when we measure quality, we measure it across various dimensions like accuracy, relevancy, timeliness, completeness, and sometimes you can go up to almost 10, 12 dimensions based on what data you are measuring to, right? And it is very important from a perspective of how we are using data, because for example, if your a very simple example is if your zip code is does not match the address that a customer is present in, then your deliveries will not happen properly, right? It could be your customer, for example, is known as with different names across two different databases in your system. Then you are not able to figure out whether the customer is the same. Similar thing could happen with the product as well. Or another example could be the date of sale is not recorded correctly. Then the entire reporting around that sale will become difficult, right? Data quality, as I said, comes across in multiple dimensions. We have to really make sure that for us to utilize data more effectively, properly, the all aspects of data will have to be ensured that they are accurate and correct, right? So that's where data quality comes in, especially in the current scenario where we are using more and more data for decision making, that too in an automated way with AI, right? So if your underlying data is not right, then it becomes very difficult for us to make accurate decisions.
Great. In an enterprise or organization, there are vast amount of data, right? And not all elements of those data are critical.
Correct.
So how does one decide about what elements to focus on?
Yeah. So we typically start with a business backward sort of a scenario where we look at what are the business metrics that you want to measure. And we look at then identify the critical data elements for those metrics. For example, sales data, sales tax, all those could be critical data elements. And obviously, there is also customer information, product information, right? So you could identify, look at what is your reporting need, what is your analysis need, what are the things that we want to measure, and work backwards from that. Look at data, look at critical data elements, and then also identify authoritative sources of those data. For example, you will have sales data across 2-3 different systems possibly, right? You could have in your CRM database where it is a projected sales, then when you are actually booking the order, then you will have the sales value, and then when you are actually receiving the payment, then you may have a different value because there is some discount involved. We have to really identify what is the authoritative data source for that data element, and then measure the quality of data in those authoritative data sources, and propagate that across various different systems that are utilizing those data for downstream decision making and analysis.
Got it.
So you identify critical data elements from your business requirements, look at what are the authoritative sources of data, then you focus your quality measures and tools, whatever that we need to do to improve data quality on those data sources, and then propagate that across various other systems for the enterprise. So that's typically the process.
How do you suggest one goes about it? Is there some kind of a strategy that needs to be built? And obviously, so for example, some kind of so one of the things that you mentioned is depending on the business outcome, your matrices will be defined,
Correct.
and based on that, the elements will be decided, right?
Correct.
What needs to be tracked, right? So, is there an audit process that needs to be done before, or is there a consultation or consulting engagement that is required typically? How does it really work? I mean, in very short, if you can share your point of view.
Yeah. So data quality actually is a subset of the overarching data governance that initiative that we need to undertake to maintain the management of the data across the enterprise, right? So now data governance will deal with the policies, standards, how you store data, who's responsible for which kind of data, how do you manage all that, all of those policies, procedures. And then we have data management, which actually deals with the tools and implementations around making sure that the policies that you decide as a part of the data governance gets implemented. And data quality is actually a subset of the overall data management piece. So typically, we always stress on the ownership of data from a business perspective. So the business owners, for example, if you have the sales team or sales, they will own the sales data. It's not the IT or the technology teams who own the data. They may own the systems that record the data, that store the data, but then the ownership of data has to start from business, because business is responsible for utilizing the data, outcomes around that, right? So the business ownership of the data starts from the business, and usually there is a enterprise data governing council in large enterprises, and it can be scaled down to the level of organization complexity that you want. But then all these roles are important. It may not be a separate department in smaller enterprises, but then the functions are very important, right? So usually there is the enterprise data governing council, which comprises of the folks from the CIO organizations, or if you have a chief data officer, then they will be responsible for at least implementing the tools, all of that, and then all the business owners, right? And then we usually have data stewards who are responsible for day-to-day operations, managing the data, resolving data quality issues, and the entire tooling, the process implementation is all facilitated, sometimes by a shared services team, which is responsible for data quality measurement and implementation of the processes like issue management and resolution. So data quality itself has aspects around profiling and assessment, cleansing, monitoring continuously, then issue management and resolution, which is called IMR. So where you actually try to look at issues on an ongoing basis and fix. And then there is a continuous loop, right, which is feeding into, again, your quality rules, all of that, right? So all this needs to be brought in across the organization with, very importantly, with ownership from business on the data.
Understood. Different size of companies or even maybe different industries may approach data quality differently.
Yes, yes.
So whether it is whether it is the size or the industries, do you think some of these factors have any influence on data quality strategy?
Absolutely, yeah, it has, but the fundamentals remain the same. As like I said, you may scale down the layers of the organization based on the size of the organization, but then there are other things. For example, highly regulated industries like financial services, banking, or insurance, where they have, for example, regulatory norms around reporting as well as maintenance of the data, looking at data lineage, how data flows from various systems, right? So they have more focus on accuracy. And while other industries, some of them that we have seen, retail and e-commerce, where the focus is more on timeliness and making it more dynamic. Data has to be available to the decision making systems quickly. Maybe there is some compromise on the accuracy part in those industries, right? So that's the way. So it all starts from what decision making that you want, how is the business using the data, and then working backwards from that. And obviously, overall, how the industry is regulated also matters. For example, I used to work with an insurance company, and there we used to have regulatory reporting, and there were aspects around data lineage that the regulators are extremely interested in terms of, okay, how much premium was booked, right? And then based on that book premium, we had to set aside a certain portion of the premium as reserves before it goes into investment. Now, there are certain standards that are followed in calculation of that reserve. But if the company wanted to change and have a slightly lower reserve, then we had to go back and convince the regulators that our data is accurate. And we saved significant amount of money getting into reserves by actually proving that our data quality is good, our models are well validated, and demonstrating that lineage across the authoritative data sources that we had, right? So that's the kind of business impact a governed data quality initiative can have on the company's outcomes.
Okay. In your experience, this was a good example actually where one of your past companies, we have in a very specific way have managed that process. But in your, again, working with now with many customers, in your experience, can you think of any data quality issues that may have had any impact on the outcome or the quality of maybe an AI or maybe even data specific project that an enterprise has undertaken?
Yeah, absolutely. We have had situations where we work with a CPG company where the entire reporting around which products are selling more, analysis of the growth of products across various categories was not accurate because the product master had multiple sort of entries for the same product. And which were differently called, which did not have a different which did not have the same primary key, etc. So that resulted in the reporting around products, decision making around various product categories very difficult. So we had to look at launching data quality and governance initiatives for managing the product data effectively and continuously evaluating the data coming in from the sales for different product categories, and then creating those authoritative data sources and making sure that the rest of the data is inherited from those authoritative data sources across the enterprise, right? So that's one example. Another example was we had multiple customers which are linked to a same headquarters, and then these customers were called differently in different customer databases, and there was no checks on the entry of data in the CRM system, because obviously you want to quickly enter that data by the rep, and then when you're actually adding a customer, an initiative around cleaning up that data had to be undertaken for us to provide a really valid customer 360 view to our client. So that's another example that comes to my mind.
Okay. Let's switch gear and talk about now what can organizations, let's talk about how to build business cases for data quality kind of program, right?
Right.
So what can organizations do in terms of measure the ROI from data quality programs and maybe measure and demonstrate ROI, and what are the maybe potential metrics that the CXOs would care when it comes to considering a project on the data quality side or program? Any thoughts on that side?
Yeah, it really depends on the kind of organization that we are talking about. For example, if you are in a highly regulated industry, there are certain reports, regulatory reports that you have to get extremely accurate, right? For example, financial services or banking or insurance, right? There is really nothing that can stop the regulator from putting a spoke on your business operations if the data is not accurate. You have to ensure that the data is accurate. Obviously, there are other kinds of data. That's where we typically start from the business side by identifying the critical data elements and then putting together a program to measure and continuously evaluate the quality of data of around those critical data elements, and putting together a process to cleanse, transform, and report on an ongoing basis on those elements, right? From an ROI perspective, it all flows from a business point of view, because you have identified those, that these are the data elements which are critical for my business. So what is the kind of processes that we need to set, and the tooling that we need to make it more effective, and the organization structure, because you will need to have data stewards and others who are working on approving a lot of the automation from a cleaning and transformation perspective is right now implemented, but still it requires an approval from a business owner or a representative of the business owner to make sure that the data is accurate. So you need to put together that structure of data stewardship as well. ROI typically really comes from identification of those reporting needs that your challenges that you have. For example, if you don't have a customer 360 view, what are we losing, right? We are losing a lot of cross sell opportunities around making the customer aware of other products, right? As well as looking at their current needs as well in terms of what they're buying, right? So that's, if you are able to justify that with the implementation of a tool and the process around managing that customer data, then that ROI will be justified.
Yeah, if you have a clear idea in terms of what good look like and current efficacy or the outcome performance rate, you will, so which means also it goes back to the point of recording or keeping a close eye in terms of continuous measurement of your outcome, and and seeing those triggers that actually gives you a this thing that maybe data quality underneath is the fundamental issue.
Correct. And here also we can actually measure these across three different stages, right? First one, when data is coming into our systems or a data warehouse, or even before that, right? So we have a data observability, which is a very lightweight check on the metadata and things like maybe the count of data coming in. For example, if you're expecting at least 1 million records to come in, you can easily figure out if only 100 records came in, then there is some problem. You can flag that issue. So it's a very simple, lightweight check. It doesn't have to be very complex and then time consuming or resource consuming. So that is observability. And then the second check could also be, we do a sampling of the data. We don't go through the entire 1 million records or 100 million records that we have. Usually, those checks are good enough for your data science initiatives or AI, because we are looking at more of interrelationships between data. And then if you are able to actually demonstrate over a period of time, let's say 1 week, 1 month, your samples are accurate, then you can reasonably be assured that your entire data is also quite okay, right? But then there is also the aspect of regulatory reporting, where you need to be more or less 100% accurate, right? So that's where that subset of data you need to make sure that you are scanning and checking for quality for all the records. So that's typically how we break it, so that you can get a systematic view, as well as you are not spending too much resources fixing some of the issues which may not be called for.
Got it. Yeah, I think that is probably a solid process to gauge early on and
Correct.
and identify areas, right? I think this probably is a good discussion in terms of our foundation piece that we wanted to cover and the business impact that we just talked about. So with this, we will wrap up today's episode. On the next episode, we'll go deep dive into strategy, from strategy to implementation, from a data quality project perspective, and see different aspects of strategy as well as implementation.
Right.
With that, we'll wrap up the session here, and we will come back with the new episode where we'll focus on strategy and implementation. Thank you, Shiva, for your time today.
Thank you, Jaideep.
And I look forward to talking to you again on the strategy and implementation session.
Sure.